Are you? All right, everybody. Sorry about that. We lost connection here. So as I was stating earlier, I'm just chopping my olives. So just again, what we're going over is we're doing sauteed mushrooms with spaghetti squash. We're making olive garlic cheesy bread, and we have a side salad on the horizon over here. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm just chopping my olives down. I'm not mincing them, but I'm just breaking them down so they're not such a ginormous portion. All right, we'll give everybody just a few moments to come back. It's poor connection. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that back in here. All right. Okay. All right. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and come back. And we're actually going to drain our green olives with pimentos. So I'm just going to loosen the lid. I'm going to drain it like this. Get all the juice out. All right. Again, sorry everybody that's coming back on. I lost connection for some odd reason. I lost connection. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of repeat some steps here for you, just so that way you guys catch everything that I just did. So kind of a recap. I went ahead and I chopped my 1 can of black olive, and I didn't mince them, but I definitely broke them down, as you can see. Now I'm getting ready to go ahead, and I just drained my green olives with pimentos. So how I do it is I just literally undo the jar, and then I just drain them that way, which I just did. So, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to empty these back out onto the tray here. And they are so hard to get out sometimes. They don't want to come out. So you just got to go in and just kind of fish them out a little bit. So just be careful, don't get them on the floor, because I know they'll roll quickly. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, again, just like I did with my black olives, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to smash these green olives with the side of my blade. These are green olives with pimentos, and this is 1 16-ounce jar that I use. So again, just kind of smash with the palm. All right. So now I'm just going to go ahead and cut these bad boys up. These are a little bit more firm than the black olives because of the pimentos. So I'm just going to go ahead and chop these up. And you know, it's really funny because every time I make this bread, I always have one friend that doesn't like olives, and they either can't stand them or they just not prefer them. But when I make this bread, they eat it anyway because they absolutely love it. So this is one of my favorite things to make, and I thank Miss Sally Jack, a good friend of mine's mom, who actually made this for me several years ago, and I only had it once, and in a desperate mood after a year of not having it, went and found the recipe or found something like it. So, and then I found it and made it my own. So I'm just going to go ahead and chop this up. This is okay to mince just because a lot of people don't like green olives. So I'm just going to go ahead and chop these bad boys up. And the good part is they're not rolling all over the place just because we smashed them before. So we are good to go. Again, I hope everybody's doing well. Thanks, Pop. I'm glad you're back. This is one of my more easy recipes to make just because I work a lot just like everybody else in the free world and don't have a whole lot of time to really get into the weeds of cooking all the time. So I try to make nice, easy recipes for everybody to follow. Okay, so for those that were following me before, we've gone through our spaghetti squash, which is baked at 375 for 40 to 45 minutes, depending upon your temperature, or your elevation, excuse me. And we poked holes in it before. And I use my knife, but you can use a fork. And you want to make sure that you go all the way around the squash itself. Hey Mama Rosie, how's it going? Hopefully you're not working right now. All right. So, now that we got these down, I'm just going to break that down just a little bit more. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take my bowl, and I'm just going to go ahead, and I always like to swipe the side of the bowl first with my knife, and then I'm just going to take everything else and I'm just going to dump it in here. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and take my black olives and I'm going to go ahead and just dump these in here as well. Now, the only thing about this recipe tonight is I don't have red onion, but that's perfectly fine. So people who don't like onions, this is perfect. This is a perfect recipe. For my onion lovers out there, you just get a medium-sized red onion and you can add that to it. Perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a little bit of my minced garlic. I'm going to use one of my serving spoons. And I'm going to go ahead and use one of my serving spoons and just dump that in there just like that. I'm going to go ahead and leave that spoon in there because I'm going to need it in just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my mayonnaise. And I've got my butter. I've got about 3/4 of a stick of butter. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and use about half of that for the recipe. So I'm just going to dump that in here like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 serving spoons of mayo and I'm going to dump this in here. And I'm going to let that sit for just a few moments while I cut our cheese. So our cheese, now you can use Colby Jack, you can use all kinds of stuff, but I tend to use Munster cheese, which is very, very good. Not your usual cheese. So it's definitely something I use on special occasions. When family's around, it's always a special occasion. So, all right. So I usually get the sliced. You can get it blocked or you can get it sliced. It really doesn't matter. I think it might take a little bit more work, especially if it's already sliced. So I'm just going to go ahead and break this away. And I'm just going to toss the little pieces of paper to separate the cheese to the side. And you can either cut it or you can break it up. It really doesn't matter because it's all going to get mixed anyway, so it's going to just meld together. So I don't think it's really going to matter. So, all right. Okay, so now we've got our cheese separated. Almost. All right, so now I've got this nice big hunkin' block of cheese that's already sliced, and what I do is I'm just going to go ahead and take it like this, and I'm just going to shred it by hand. So, and it might take a little bit of extra time and effort, but what better place do I have to be than in my kitchen right now? So, anyway. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and break these up. You can make them big, you can make this pieces small. It really doesn't matter because, like I said, it's all going to meld together. Now, this recipe, you're going to have to look at it and make sure it melds together. So you're going to know here in just a few moments. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So you may need a little bit more butter. You may need a little bit more mayo. For those that don't like mayo, very little, and a little bit more butter. You can substitute the mayo. You can use margarine if you don't want to use butter. You know, it's really going to be on your personal preference on how you want to make it. All right, so we're going to continue to do this. Here in a few moments, we'll check on our squash in the oven as we get it, just to check up on it, see how it's going. And as I said, we're literally breaking up the cheese. Breaking the cheese. All right, so just the last bit, just going to go ahead and rip and shred and tear and everything else. I think it is a little bit better when you have it in a little bit, you know, smaller pieces, when you break it down into smaller pieces rather than large, just because it's easier to mix and it's easier to spread the actual mix. So here, I'll go ahead and show you in just a moment what it looks like. So we've got our olives in here, we've got our 1 spoon of garlic, we've got our 2 pieces of mayo in here, we've got our cheese in here. So this is what it looks like at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and stir this in just a moment. So I've let the butter sit out a little bit so that way it would soften. And I'm just going to go ahead and stir this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn you around here, and you'll go ahead and see me as I stir this around, because you want it to be very well mixed when you actually put it on the bread. And you want to make sure the butter is very well mixed in as well. And how do you know that? Well, because you'll see a big clump of cheese or a big clump of butter and it's not mixed in. So that's how you know. But as you can see, there are some dry spots, so you definitely want to make sure that you get the mayo and the butter melding in together. Could you probably separate these and actually mix them before you put all the other stuff in? Sure, but this is just how, out of practice and out of habit, this is what I do. So, all right, so I'm just taking my spatula and I'm just kind of mixing it around a little bit. Again, I love my plastic spatulas because you get everything on the sides and you just keep mixing and mixing. This still got a little bit of butter in there. And actually, so I'm going to actually use a little bit more butter. I'll probably use the rest of this. So depending upon what, you know, how much you make and stuff like that will depend on how much butter you use. So I've made quite a bit, even though I'm only using half of my loaf of bread. So for those that missed out, I actually got cut off. Probably the government shutting me off. I'm kidding. I work for the government in dual capacity. I'm sorry. But anyway, I didn't mean it, Dad. But anyway, or Big Brother, however you look at it. But anyway, so I went ahead and I poked holes in my spaghetti squash, and we have that in the oven right now, which I'll show you. That is baking at 375 for 40 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes. And again, based upon altitude and everything else, will depend on if it needs to cook longer or shorter, or based on your oven and how you decide to make it. Now, I always let mine cook just open freely in the oven, just because to me that I can actually watch it better. Plus, I also know when it's done. So how do you know it's done when you have a closed shell like the spaghetti squash? Easy, because you actually see the outer part, the yellow part of the spaghetti squash turn dark brown. When it's dark brown, it's really done and it's really soft. I mean, it's not going to overcook, but you definitely don't want the outside to burn, just because it doesn't smell that good. So anyway, all right, so here we go. We've got our mixture here. We still have a little bit of butter that is not completely mixed, so you just want to go ahead and check, swish it around, mix it up, stir it up. You know, if you had a really long day and people upsetting you, yelling at you, screaming at you. This is a good exercise to take out your aggression. I tell you, some of this stuff, if I was tenderizing meat, that would be a great great reliever after a long day. What do you say, Pam? So for those that are just joining me, my cousin Pam's here. When we have dinner, we try to have dinner at least once or twice a month, just to kind of catch up and everything else. And you know, it's getting warm out there, guys. I hope you're drinking lots of water. For my VA folks who work with me out in the COVID testing, my employees, I'm always harping on them. And that's one thing about me being in the military, is to drink water, hydrate. So, and especially with the summer months coming up, you know, we're starting to warm up here in Vegas. Hopefully it's nice where you are. All right, so we've got our nice little mixture here. So I'm going to go ahead and let that sit for just a moment. I'm going to rinse my hands, and then we're going to go over to the oven, and we're going to check on our spaghetti squash. So right over here, let's take a look. So it's starting to cook really well, and as you can see, it's already been about 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, and it's already browned a little bit. So it's already been 20 minutes in the oven. So what I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle a little pepper in this. Now you can put paprika. I have smoked paprika up in the cabinet. I'm not going to use it tonight, but I put a little bit of pepper in here, and I'm going to use a little bit of salt. Now this already has a lot of salt in here already. I'm not going to sprinkle a whole lot, just because, again, I'm trying to watch the figure, watch everything, so especially the salt content. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little. Literally, that's a little bit for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix this up just a little bit again. And we will go from there. Mix one more time. Gives it another chance to get all the butter and everything else. For those that work today, I really hope that you are home and enjoying your family and enjoying some relaxation time. For those that know me, I am in my happy place right now in my kitchen. So this is where I rest and relax. Mainly because nobody's allowed in my kitchen other than me. All right, so I'm just going to let that sit here for just a moment. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. So this is my Portabello mushrooms. You can get them at your local store. Again, so for everybody that missed earlier, everything that I'm making tonight can feed 3 to 4 people at $20. So that is really a good deal, and you really can't even go out to eat for $20. It costs usually about $20 for one person. Everything that you're seeing tonight costs about $20 to make from scratch. Takes maybe about 30 to 40 minutes to make, depending upon how fast or how slow you move. Some people move a little quicker than me, but you know, just $20. I mean, that's quite a deal, you know, especially for those families that are living on a budget and everything else. I mean, this is homemade, it's healthy, you know, different things. So I've opened up my my mushrooms, so I'm going to leave them there for just a moment, because I'm going to go ahead and turn on my oven, or my stove. Excuse me, goodness, it has been a long day. I've been in meetings all day, so you have to forgive me, guys. All right, so I've turned on my fire. I put it on just a below medium, and I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit more butter. Butter makes the world go round, and also makes you round. But anyway, all right, so I'm going to set you down here for just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my butter, and so I use Kerrygold Irish butter. That's one of my favorites. I also use Land O'Lakes, but today I'm just going to go ahead and use some of my Kerrygold. So I'm just going to kind of break this up a little bit with my hands. Came straight out of the refrigerator, as you just saw. So I'm only going to break off about 1/3 of a cup. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn you around here So I'm just going to drop this in the pan just like that. Okay, I'm going to set this off to the side, and I'm just going to let that melt a little bit. Try and put that in the center and let that melt. I always love to use my wooden spatulas just because that's my comfort zone. Okay, so here we go. We've got our minced garlic, right? So I said we were going to leave that spoon in there just for that. So I'm going to go ahead and take one big serving spoon of minced garlic. I'm going to put that in there just like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually tip the jar a little bit. And I'm actually going to turn you around. And I'm going to tip the jar a little bit just because I want to get some of the juice. Okay? So as you can see, I don't know if you can see that, but we'll... Alright, so we got some juice. I'm just going to dump that in there. Alright, so as you can hear, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but we've got some sizzling going on here. So I'm just going to go ahead and stir that up just a little bit. You don't want the butter to burn, so you want to make sure you turn it down. But you definitely want to stir this up. And there we go. We got some light on the subject here, as my grandma used to say. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and let that simmer for just a little bit. Even out the garlic. And I'm going to set that up. And I'm going to go ahead and get our mushrooms. So we've got an entire package of mushrooms. I think this cost maybe like $3.50, $3.99, something like that at the local grocery store. No biggie, but you know, again, out of everything that I got for tonight, really for one meal, 20 bucks. Come on. You can't do much worse than that. So, all right, so I've got my mushrooms, we've got our butter. It's already simmering, as you can kind of see a little bit. So I'm just going to add a little bit of these at a time. And the reason is because you don't want it to completely build up or get too much in there because they won't cook evenly anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and take some of these and just sprinkle them in there because you want to get as much sauce, butter, and minced garlic on these as possible. I'm going to use the whole package, or maybe almost all the package. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to mix that up just a little bit. I'm actually going to turn you around so I can set you down for just a moment. Alright, so I'm going to take the rest and I'm just going to dump this in here. Alright, so we've got all of our mushrooms in here, and I'm just going to go ahead and stir this around a little bit just so that way we can get all of this butter and garlic all over these portobello mushrooms. It's already starting to smell like heaven. Alright. Okay, so I'm going to let this sit. I'm going to let this sit and simmer for just a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and take a look at our spaghetti squash here. So let's take a, that looks beautiful. And as you can see just a little bit, see if we can zoom in here. The color is definitely starting to change. So luckily for you, I've already got one finished. So over here, and remember how I said you'll start to notice the different colors and everything else? So here's what our spaghetti squash that I already made earlier looks like. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get us a knife, and we're going to go ahead and open this bad boy up. I'm going to rinse it off real quick. But we're going to open this bad boy up, and then we're going to scoop out the seeds on the inside, and then we're going to shred our spaghetti squash. And all it takes is a spoon and a fork. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and take my knife, and it's so soft that it almost cuts. You almost don't need a knife. But I always use a knife just because there are certain parts of it that are still a little rough, and the ends are usually the parts that are rough. But if you can see, it almost cuts like butter. And then it opens just like a book. So, as I said, I'm going to go ahead and get a spoon, and I'm going to go ahead and take out the inside of the seeds. And then I'm going to take a little fork, and I'm going to go ahead and rake out the inside. So I'm just going to take this like this. And yes, you'll get some of the squash in there. It's fine. I'm just going to set this off to the side because I've got a tray here and I can clean the tray later. And as you can see, it's already starting to shred even without the fork. So I'm just taking out the seeds, taking out the gooey part just like the pumpkin. Excuse me. And then we're going to go ahead and rake. So what I'm going to do, and it's still warm, so what you do is after you have cut your once you take out your spaghetti squash from the oven, you always want to let it cool down. So this one had an opportunity to sit for about 20 minutes. So I didn't just pull it out of the oven and, oh my gosh, you know, just go ahead and start shredding that. But see, just even by cutting that open and just taking out the seeds, you see how it looks like spaghetti squash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you over to our pan, and I'm going to take our little half here that we have, and I'm going to go ahead and stir our mushrooms up because our mushrooms are almost done. They're almost sauteed, and it's perfectly fine because they don't need to be completely cooked at this moment because we need some of that mushroom sauce to go ahead and finish us off. So I've turned up the heat a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and let that sit for just a moment, and I'm just going to start raking our spaghetti squash. And I'll kind of turn you this way. There we go. And this is a little bit of a process, but as you can see, it's not that bad of a process. It's coming out pretty quick and pretty easy. Now you can take a spoon and come in later and get more out of it. I'm just literally raking it as we go along. Set that down and stir this around just a little bit so we can get some more room here. And then what I'm going to do in just a moment is I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil. I'm not cooking with the olive oil. I'm just putting the olive oil in there to give it a little extra flavor. So I'm not cooking with olive oil, but I'm actually using the olive oil as a little flavor. So I'm going to add some of my Parmesan cheese and our 4 cheeses to this, to also include the olive oil once it's fully cooked. So I'm just adding this so it gives it a little extra flavor, but also it will soak up some of that awesome mushroom flavor and the butter and all that extra seasoning that we got going on there. Alright, so we got one going on here. I'm just going to go ahead and shift gears here, or as we say in the Navy, shift your rudder. I'm going to go ahead and stir this up real quick before we get our other one over here. I'm going to show you what this looks like. So you can see some of that butter still and the mushrooms cooking down, so it's giving us a little extra juice there, and I'm just stirring it about. We've got minced garlic in here. Now you could actually add like an Alfredo sauce, or you could add your own spaghetti sauce. I'm not doing that with this. I am literally just making sauteed portobello mushrooms with spaghetti squash, and yes, it is a lot of squash. That is just half. But if you're feeding a large group, or even a small group with a large appetite, it gets the job done. But the good thing is that it's all vegetables. Really, I mean, it's one thing that parents want their kids to eat growing up. And it's the hardest thing to get them to eat. So, alright. So I'm just going to go ahead and let that simmer for a little bit. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. I don't want it to get crunchy or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and come back over here. I'm just going to scoop out the seeds again on the other half. Don't want to do it too hard because, again, it is soft, so you will get a lot of movement from the actual spaghetti squash. So you'll lose a lot if you do it too hard. So I'm just going to take that out, and it's like a pumpkin. Belongs to the pumpkin family. So there we go. All right, so we're almost there. Finish getting the seeds out. It's definitely involved, but it's one of my favorite meals to make too. A lot of the food I make is my favorite meals. As my grandma used to say, I don't think you've ever met a meal you didn't like. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and head back over this way. Alrighty. And I'm going to take my fork and we're just going to go back in. We're going to dive back in here. Again, this spaghetti squash has had about 20 to 30 minutes to sit, so it's going to bake for about 40, and then you're going to let it sit for about 20 because you don't want to burn your hands. And then you're going to go ahead and cut it in half. You're going to scoop out the seeds, and then, like I'm doing, I'm taking a fork and I'm just literally raking it out. Now, I'm not getting all of it out. I mean, I really could, but for the sake of time and effort and everything else, I'm doing the basics for this. If you've got the time, go for it. I'm a big firm believer in not wasting food if at all possible. And when Pam's around, we give all the food to her chickens and her ducks. So no food goes to waste when Pam comes around. It's good eating. Those chickens and ducks, I swear, they eat just as good, if not better, than we do sometimes.
They're happy chickens.
So, all right. So as you can see, and as you start to scrape, you'll notice as you can almost see the color change. I can almost see it's almost transparent as you scrape down into the bottom. So that's how you know you're getting close to the edge. So again, I'm just scraping along through here. I'm not getting all of it out right at the moment, but you get the gist of what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and set this off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and rake that off, and then I'm just going to mix this up. Grab a little napkin here. So the good thing about this is that it's not heavy. It looks heavy, but it isn't. So you'll eat some of this, and it's almost like Chinese food. You'll eat this now, and you'll get stuffed and everything else, and about an hour later, you're going to want more. So that's the good thing about it. And it's healthy for you, so it's not going to just sit there like regular carbs. It's actually going to be processed by your body, and you are going to get nourishment and everything else out of it. So that's the good thing. So this is actually on a low heat right now. I've got Our mushrooms are almost completely cooked all the way through. So what I'm going to do here in just a moment, I'm going to show you, this is what it looks like. So it looks like a crazy mess, but it's actually really, really good. So, all right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just even it out. I'm going to set that down, and then what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and get our cheese, and we're going to get, so we have our 4 cheeses here. Oops. We have our 4 cheeses, and then we have some Parmesan cheese. If you want, you don't have to. That's kind of what I normally do, but I'm going to use my 4 cheese today. So I'm going to sprinkle first a little bit of olive oil. So I don't have a whole lot of olive oil. Like I said, I'm just going to put a little bit in here. So I'm just going to drizzle a little bit over the top. And that's all I've got is a little bit. I'm literally out. So, that's our oven. So, now we know our 40 minutes is up for our spaghetti squash. our second one. So anyway, all right. So I'm just going to go ahead and stir this up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and put a little bit of salt and pepper on here. We've got garlic in here. We've got portobello mushrooms. We've got olive oil. We've got butter. We have our spaghetti squash in here. So now we just need to top it off a little bit before we do our cheese is our salt and pepper. So we can go ahead and put in our cheese, and then we can actually just let it sit. So I just sprinkled a little bit on the top. Not a whole lot. And with our pepper, sprinkle just on the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix it up again. And then I'm going to sprinkle this on the top, sprinkle the cheese on the top, and I'm going to put the lid on the pan, and I'm going to forget it for just a little bit because it's just going to cook on low, and all of the steam and everything else will continue to resonate through the spices and the food and everything else, which will give it just enough of a crunch, but not too much. Okay, so I'm going to even it out right now. Just take the bottom of my spatula here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and set this off to the side, and I'm just going to take this. You know, Gil, I hope so. I really do. I really hope it tastes good. I've always thought it tasted good, and I'm not much of a vegan eater, but I found this a while back, and I kind of made it my own. So I'm just taking this, and I'm just sprinkling it on the top. And what'll happen is once I put the cover on it, it's going to melt the cheese, and then when you come back, you're going to mix it again before you serve it. So I'm just going to sprinkle it like this all the way around the pan, and again it's on low. So, and I don't like to let any area go uncheesed. Alright, so here we go, we've got that and the center. So I'm actually going to turn this off, and I'm just going to cover it up with the lid. Let it sit tightly, and I'm going to come back to my garlic bread, which we're only going to use half today, in which we got a big bowl of our spread here. So what I'm going to do is I'll turn you this way so you can kind of see it just a little bit. So I'm just going to take it, and this is one of the reasons why I love my spatula. Just take it and just lay it on there, and then you just spread it out. So rather than using a spoon or something like that, you actually get the majority on the bread. And when you have an open book, so to speak, you don't lose as much when you go down the center. Depending upon the mood and how quick I want things to roll, sometimes I'll cut it up, I'll slice it up, and then I'll push it all together, so that way it's just easier, and as I make a mess of it, it's perfectly fine because it's on the cutting board. So, but anyway, as you just put it on here, you just spread it out like you would a regular sandwich or something like that, a normal piece of bread, and just spread it out. You don't have to cheese it. You don't have to anything. You can put paprika on here. That's actually part of one of the main ingredients on this. I'm not tonight, but you can put smoked paprika. I also did not use red onion tonight, but that is also something else that you can add in there for my onion lovers. I'm an onion garlic lover. I feel sorry for the person who ever has to kiss me ever, because I love it, but it's good for you. At least that's what I tell myself. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to just put this on here. And I'm just doing generous helpings here. I mean, literally, this is pretty generous here. But because once you actually take this off and put it in the broil, it'll all melt and it'll all fall off the side. So you got to be careful of how much you put on there, just because of everything else. And I like to go through and I like to patch up the holes and make sure it looks nice and pretty, because presentation's everything. But not always, but sometimes when I feel fancy enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to patch that up, make sure that everything looks nice, try and get the edges, fill in the edges as much as possible, because you want every piece of the bread to be nice and savory. It's very funny because I never thought I would ever be remembered for the things that I cook in my kitchen. For some reason, people remember the things I make. So that's a good testament to my upbringing and my grandma and everything that she did and everything that I learned in the Navy. So, or at least I should say thus far. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take one of my other smaller pans and I'm going to go ahead and line it with some foil. Go ahead and move this out of the way. Gilbert, I have no problem. You are always welcome in my house. And as a matter of fact, anybody who ever finds themselves in Vegas, you'll always have a place at my table. So I am more than happy to cook for whoever, especially you, Gilbert. For those that don't know, Gilbert is the brother of one of my very best friends from the Navy. A funny story is Ginger, Gilbert's sister, when we first met, I absolutely hated Ginger's guts, because I hated her guts because she was training for the Olympics, and she was 84th, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gilbert, she was 84th internationally as a wrestler, as a female wrestler. She was a pro Navy wrestler, and she was also a swimmer, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And when she trained, so did we. And 18-year-old me hated Ginger. Sorry. But hated Ginger for everything that she put us through. But I tell you, had it not been for Ginger, I would have never made it through my Marine Corps training. So I have to say, as much as I hated her, I had to say I loved her and I respected her in the end, because now we're really good friends. But but at first, it was a rocky start. So, all right, here we go. So we've got our bread in here, and it looks gorgeous, and I'll pull it back out in just a moment. This is what it looks like. We've got our bread nice and loaded here, so I'm just going to let it cook, because I don't know about you, but I've never seen bread cook with the oven door open. So, all right, as we go ahead and wait for our bread and everything else, I'm going to go ahead and fix our salad, because we also have a side salad. So my favorite is always going to be the Caesar. And when you're in a hurry and you've been working all day, you do not want to do anything from scratch. So that's why God invented the ready-to-go kit. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to dump my salad in here. Get it ready to go. So I'm waiting for my olive garlic cheesy bread to finish. My spaghetti squash with mushrooms is already ready. I'm just waiting for the bread and the salad to be finished. And I'm sure Pam is ready for me to shut up. So
oh, so good.
all right, so I'm just going to go ahead. I'm just opening up my stuff here in no particular way. I'm just slapping it together here. And as we get ready to top it all off, so I'm just going to go ahead and drizzle this all over the place, and then I'm going to take a nice spoon, a big spoon, and I'm just going to go ahead and mix it together. I'm not going to stir it, I'm just going to mix it. I'm going to fold it, as I always do in these matters, just because it's always good to fold, not mix. So, all right, so again, fold, not stir, go from side to side, turn the bowl. And I just pick random places. I don't really have a method to this. There's really no method to my madness half the time. It's just trying things out. And that's one of the things I love about cooking, is if you get it wrong this time, you can always go for it again. If first you don't succeed, try again. So that's one of the things I love about cooking. Not so much in medicine. You screw up once the patient dies, you don't try again. At least not on that one. So, and I think usually at that point they kind of take away your license or tell you to stop. So, after so many patients. So. At least when you get this wrong, you can always try again. All right. So, our salad is nice and mixed. But let's go ahead and check on our bread, because we don't want to forget about that. It'll burn. It'll burn really fast. Burn, baby, burn. All right, so it's almost finished. Let's check on our... There we go. And that is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous right there. So that's our spaghetti squash with our portobello mushrooms. And we've got our nice salad over there already mixed, and we've got our bread right here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it just so that way we get a nice even crisp. But look at that. Oh, and it smells amazing. Okay, almost done. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and start plating our bad boy here. So, any questions? I love to hear questions from the peanut gallery. All right, well, I guess we don't have any right now. But again, so tonight was spaghetti squash. We had with portobello mushrooms, with a little bit of olive oil and minced garlic and butter. We have a little, that has also a little salt and pepper in there. Then we have our nice little side salad, Caesar salad. And then we have our garlic bread, which I'm going to go ahead and turn off the oven because I don't want it to burn. And let's take a look. The edges burn just a little bit. That's to be expected. But look at that. And that's what everybody calls my pizza bread. So, and I can't wait. Ooh, that looks good. Oh my God. I really can't wait. Let's go ahead and get some of this. We have to get some of this. I'm sure Pam's starving by now after what.
It smells so
I'm sure Pam is like, shut up already and let's eat. All right, so let's take a look. All right, guys, here we go. Here's the true test. Here's the true test. Now you can either mix it up or you can serve it just like this. I'm just going to serve it just like that. Pam doesn't eat a whole lot, but I think that should be enough. And then we've got our olive garlic cheesy bread over here. So I'm going to scoot that in here. And I'm going to turn you around so we can cut this bad boy. So let's see. Get my knife here, rinse it off, make sure I don't have any extra goodies to add to the bread than what's already there. All right, so let's take a look. All right, set this off to the side. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to cut down the center. And it may or may not pull apart, and that's perfectly fine. Just take your knife and cut as long as you need to cut to get it right down the center, or as center as you want it. I'm going to go ahead and cut this piece right here. Ooh, hear that crunch. I love that sound. All right. Let's take a look. There it is. There it is. Glenda, thank you. All right, guys. Well, here we go. Let's take a look. And this is our spaghetti squash with sauteed portobello mushrooms, a Caesar salad, and an olive garlic cheesy bread. And let's take a look. Let's just take a bite. Get some cheese in there. Mmm. This is calling your name. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Thank you all. Bye-bye.